Welcome to Calm Mind English. There's a strange kind of tiredness that comes before you do the work. The task is not even started yet, but your mind already feels like it has been carrying it for hours. You know what needs to be done, and that is exactly why. It feels hard to touch. Maybe it is one email you have to send. Maybe it is one form you have to finish, one project you have to begin, one conversation you have been avoiding, or one decision you keep pushing into tomorrow. It is not a mystery. You know the thing. But instead of opening it, you check your phone. You reply to a message that could have waited. You clean one corner of the room. You look for a better playlist, a better plan, a better time. From the outside, it may not look like avoidance. It may look like you are doing something. You're moving, clicking, arranging, preparing, thinking. But the one thing that actually matters stays untouched. This is why avoidance can feel so confusing. You're not lying on the floor, doing nothing. You may even be busy. You may finish 5 small things, answer small messages, organize small details, and still feel a quiet pressure in your chest because the main task is still there. The mind is very good at hiding avoidance inside useful activity. It chooses work that gives quick relief. A small task has a clear beginning and a clear end. You can finish it and feel a small reward. The hard task is different. It may be unclear. It may take longer. It may expose something about your ability, your future, or your responsibility. So your mind reaches for the easier task first. It tells you, just clear this up before you start. Just check this one thing. Just get your space ready. Just wait until your mind feels more focused. At first, this sounds reasonable. A clean desk can help. A plan can help. A short break can help. But after a while, you notice the pattern. The preparation keeps expanding, and the real work keeps moving away. Imagine someone named Daniel sitting at his desk after work. He has one important document to finish. It is not impossible, but it matters. He opens the laptop, sees the file, and immediately feels his body tighten. Instead of writing the first line, he checks his messages. Then he notices the desktop is messy, so he makes a new folder. Then he remembers a small bill, so he pays it. Then he watches one short video, because he tells himself he needs to reset his mind. An hour passes. He has done several things, but the document is still blank. Now the task feels even bigger because it has collected one more hour of guilt. It is no longer just a document. It has become proof that he is falling behind. It has become a silent judgment sitting on the screen. This is the painful part of avoidance. The longer you avoid the task, the more emotional weight it gains. The task itself may not grow, but your feeling around it grows. A 10-minute action can begin to feel like a wall. Many people think discipline begins with forcing themselves to climb that wall. They wait for a strong mood. They wait for a serious version of themselves to appear. They think, when I finally become focused, I will do it properly. But daily life rarely works that way. Focus often comes after contact, not before it. The first touch is usually uncomfortable. The mind complains. The body wants an escape. The phone feels suddenly interesting, even if there is nothing important on it. This does not mean you are weak. It means your brain has learned that the task brings discomfort and the phone brings relief. The phone gives fast movement, fast color, fast information, and fast escape. The hard task gives silence, uncertainty, and the possibility of frustration. So the mind chooses the door with less friction. You may notice this in very ordinary moments. You need to study, but suddenly you feel hungry. You need to apply for something, but suddenly your room looks messy. You need to start exercise, but suddenly you need to research the perfect routine. You need to deal with money, but suddenly you remember another easy errand. The problem is not that these other things are always useless. The problem is timing. They become escape routes when they appear right before the task that matters. This is why avoidance can feel so personal. You may ask yourself, why am I doing this again? Why do I keep running away from something I know is important? Why can I help other people finish smaller jobs and handle daily responsibilities, but freeze in front of this one thing? Because this one thing carries meaning. It is tied to pressure. It may be tied to your future. It may be tied to being judged. It may be tied to fear that you will try and still not do well. A simple task can become emotionally loud when it touches identity. If you need to send a serious message, it is not only typing, it is facing the response. If you need to apply for a job, it is not only uploading a resume, it is facing the possibility of rejection. If you need to study, it is not only reading, it is facing the question of whether you can change your life. That is why the mind tries to turn away. Avoidance is often a search for temporary safety. The phone is safe because it does not ask much from you. Small chores are safe because they are familiar. Planning is safe because it lets you stay near the task without truly entering it. But the relief does not last. After the small escape, the task is still there. And now you also carry the feeling that you avoided it again. This creates a loop. The task feels heavy, so you avoid it. You avoid it, so it feels heavier. Then the next attempt becomes even harder. The first step is to see the loop without insulting yourself. Harsh self-talk often makes avoidance stronger. When you call yourself lazy, broken, or hopeless, the task becomes connected with shame. And when shame increases, the mind wants to escape even more. A calmer way is to name what is happening clearly. I'm not doing the main task. I'm doing easier things to avoid the discomfort of starting. This sentence may feel uncomfortable, but it is useful because it is honest without being cruel. Once you see avoidance clearly, you can stop confusing movement with progress. You can ask a simple question. Am I doing this because it truly needs to be done now? Or because it helps me avoid the thing that matters? That question brings the mind back to the center. You do not need to fix your whole discipline today. You do not need to become a completely different person. For now, just notice the moment. When your hand reaches for the phone before your mind reaches for the task. That small moment is important. It is the doorway where avoidance begins. If you can see it, you're no longer fully trapped inside it. The one thing you're avoiding may still feel uncomfortable. It may still feel larger than it really is. But now you are beginning to understand the pattern. The issue is not only time management. It is emotional pressure hiding inside a normal task. And when you understand that, you can stop fighting yourself blindly. You can begin to work with your mind more carefully, more honestly, and with less punishment. The task is still there. But now, instead of running from it without knowing why, you can pause and see what your mind is protecting you from. That is where real self-discipline starts. Not with force, not with panic, with the quiet ability to notice the escape route before you take it again. The part that makes avoidance confusing is that it often happens with tasks you care about. If the task did not matter, you might simply ignore it and feel almost nothing. But when something matters, your mind does not meet it as a simple action. It meets it as a place where you might be judged, disappointed, confused, or forced to see something you do not want to see. This is why the same person can answer 10 easy messages, clean the kitchen, watch a few videos, and even help someone else with their problem, but still avoid one important thing on their own list. The body is moving. The day is not empty. But the real task is still untouched because that task carries emotional weight. Maybe the task is applying for something. On the surface, it is just filling out information, checking documents, and pressing submit. But underneath, it may quietly mean, what if I'm not qualified? What if I make a mistake? What if I try seriously and still get rejected? Maybe the task is studying. On the surface, it is just opening a book or watching a lesson. But underneath, it may mean facing how much you do not know yet. It may bring back memories of falling behind, feeling slow, or comparing yourself with someone who seems to learn faster. Maybe the task is starting a creative project. On the surface, it is just writing, recording, designing, or practicing. But underneath, it may mean allowing your taste to be higher than your current skill. You can imagine something good, but when you begin, the first version looks rough. That gap can feel painful. The mind often protects you from that pain by giving you another direction. It does not say, I am afraid. It says, check your phone first. It says, you need more time. It says, you should wait until you feel ready. It says, there is one smaller thing you should handle before this. This is why self-discipline becomes harder when you only attack yourself. When you call yourself lazy, weak, or undisciplined, you add another layer of pressure to a task that already feels heavy. Now the task is not only something you need to do, it also becomes proof of your character. That is a heavy way to begin. No wonder your mind looks for an exit. Think about a quiet evening. The room is not noisy. Nobody is forcing you. The important task is sitting there, waiting. You look at it and feel a small tightening inside your chest or stomach. It is not dramatic, but it is real. Something in you says, not yet. That small feeling is the beginning of the escape. If you do not notice it, the next step happens automatically. Your hand reaches for your phone. Your eyes move to another tab. You suddenly remember laundry, dishes, a message, or a small errand. Your mind gives you a reason that sounds practical, but the real reason is often simpler. The task makes you feel exposed before you even start. Starting means you can no longer hide behind the idea of doing it later. Starting turns the task from a thought into evidence. Once you begin, you may see that it is harder than you hoped. You may see that you are not as prepared as you wanted to be. You may see that progress is slower than the clean version you imagined in your head. So the mind chooses the strange comfort of delay. Delay hurts, but it is familiar. Delay lets you keep the image that you could do it, just not right now. It protects your hope for a little longer, even while it slowly drains your confidence. This is one of the quiet traps of avoidance. It gives short relief, but it creates long pressure. For a few minutes, you feel free from the task. Then later, the task returns heavier than before. Now it carries the original work, plus the memory that you avoided it again. Over time, this can make one task feel larger than it truly is. The task becomes mixed with shame. It becomes mixed with yesterday, last week, and all the times you promised yourself you would start. You're no longer facing only the work. You are facing the history around the work. This is why a simple command like just do it often does not work. It ignores the emotional friction that is built up around the task. It treats the problem as if you have no reason for avoiding it, when often your mind has too many reasons, too many meanings, and too much pressure attached to one beginning. A better way to see it is this. Avoidance is not always a refusal to work. Sometimes it is a refusal to feel what the work brings up. When you understand that, you do not have to excuse the avoidance. You also do not have to hate yourself for it. You can look at the moment more clearly. You can ask what this task is making you feel before you. Ask why you are not moving. Maybe it makes you feel behind. Maybe it makes you feel uncertain. Maybe it makes you feel like your effort will finally be tested. Once you name the feeling, the task becomes less mysterious. It is still uncomfortable, but it is no longer an invisible wall. This matters because self-control does not begin only with pushing harder. It begins with seeing the exact place where your mind starts to turn away. That place may be small. It may happen in 1 second. But if you can catch it, you can stop treating avoidance like a personal failure. and start treating it like a signal. The signal is telling you that the task has become emotionally too large. It needs to be brought back down a size. It needs to become something your nervous system can touch without feeling threatened. Before that can happen, you need honesty without punishment. You need to admit, I am not avoiding this because I do not care. I may be avoiding it because I care too much, and the pressure around it has become bigger than the first step. That kind of honesty changes the tone inside your mind. It removes some of the shame. It gives you room to work with the resistance instead of fighting it blindly. The task is still waiting. The responsibility has not disappeared. But now you can see that the real obstacle is not only time, energy, or discipline. It is the emotional charge around beginning. And once you can see that charge, you can begin to lower it. You can make the entrance smaller. You can stop asking your mind to walk through a wall and instead give it one narrow door. The way out of avoidance is not to wait until you feel strong. It is to change the shape of the first step. Most people try to start too far ahead. They sit down with the pressure to finish, succeed, respond perfectly, make the right decision, or solve everything at once. The mind feels that pressure and moves away before the work even begins. So the first change is simple. Do not ask yourself to finish the task. Ask yourself to make contact with it. Contact is smaller than progress. Contact means opening the file, reading the first sentence, writing one rough line, placing the paper on the desk, looking at the requirement, finding the phone number, setting a timer for 5 minutes, and staying with the task without demanding a result. This sounds almost too small, but that is the point. Avoidance grows when the first step feels like a commitment to the whole burden. The mind thinks if I begin, I have to carry all of it, so it refuses to begin. You can teach your mind something different. Starting does not mean finishing. Starting means touching. Imagine the same desk again. The important task is still there. The phone is still nearby. But this time, the goal is not to complete everything. The goal is only to open the task and stay with it for 5 quiet minutes. During those 5 minutes, you are allowed to be slow. You are allowed to feel resistance. You are allowed to write a bad first sentence. You are allowed to not know the full answer yet. The only rule is that you do not run away immediately. This is how the emotional wall becomes lower. You are not trying to defeat your mind. You are showing your mind that the task can be approached without danger. You are proving through action that contact is survivable. Once contact happens, the task often changes. It becomes less vague. You begin to see the next small move. Maybe you notice that the email only needs 3 lines. Maybe you realize the form needs 1 missing detail. Maybe you find that the problem is not impossible, just unclear. Avoidance makes everything blurry. Contact brings the edges back. A useful question is, what is the smallest visible action I can take in the next 2 minutes? Not the most impressive action, not the perfect action, the smallest visible action. If you need to study, open the exact page. If you need to clean, put one object where it belongs. If you need to apply for something, create the folder. If you need to make a call, write the first sentence you will say. If you need to exercise, put on the shoes and stand near the door. The action should be so clear that your mind cannot turn it into a debate. Many people lose energy because they keep asking large questions at the wrong moment. Should I do this now? Can I finish it? What if it takes too long? What if I am not ready? These questions may sound logical, but they often open the door to negotiation. When the mind is already resisting, negotiation becomes a hiding place. A smaller instruction works better. Open the document. Sit down. Write the date. Read 1 paragraph. Send 1 message. Put the phone in another room for 10 minutes. Clear actions reduce inner argument. Your environment can help you here. You do not need a perfect system. But you do need less friction around the right action and more friction around escape. If the phone is the usual door out, move it away before you start. Not because the phone is evil, but because your tired mind will choose whatever is closest. Put it across the room. Place it face down. Use another device only if needed. Give yourself a small space where the task is easier to reach than the distraction. Then make the task physically visible. Leave the notebook open. Keep the file on the screen. Put the document on the table. The mind is influenced by what the body sees first. Discipline becomes easier when your space quietly points you toward the next action. There is also a better way to speak to yourself. Many people start with a harsh command. Stop being lazy. Why are you like this? Just do it. But this kind of voice often creates more pressure, and pressure is already part of the problem. A steadier voice is more useful. Say to yourself, I only need to touch this for 5 minutes. I do not need to finish everything right now. I am allowed to begin badly. I can make the next step visible. This is not weakness. It is strategy. The mind that avoids important tasks is often overwhelmed by the size of the meaning around them. A calm instruction brings the task back into the present moment. The present moment is where action happens. You cannot complete the whole future today. You cannot solve every possible outcome before beginning. You cannot guarantee that the work will be perfect, but you can take one small action that exists in front of you. One line, one file, one page, one message, one choice. After that, you can take another. This is how momentum is built, not through a sudden emotional transformation, but through repeated contact. Each small contact tells the mind, I can approach this. I can stay here. I do not have to escape the moment discomfort appears. Over time, this changes your relationship with difficult tasks. The task may still feel uncomfortable, but discomfort no longer controls the whole room. You learn that you can feel resistance and still move. You learn that fear can be present without being the leader. You learn that the first step does not need to feel good to be useful. This is a quiet form of self-discipline. It does not look dramatic. No one may see it. It may look like a person sitting at a desk, opening a file they avoided for days. It may look like someone writing one imperfect paragraph. It may look like a phone placed across the room, while the task finally receives 10 minutes of honest attention. But inside, something important is happening. You are rebuilding trust with yourself. Every time you avoid, trust becomes a little weaker. You tell yourself you will do it later, and then later becomes another delay. After enough repetition, you start doubting your own promises. But every small act of contact repairs that trust. You do not repair it with one perfect day. You repair it by doing one small thing when your mind wants to run. You repair it by returning after distraction. You repair it by starting again without making the mistake bigger than it needs to be. There will still be days when you avoid. That does not erase your progress. The point is not to become a person who never resists anything. The point is to become someone who notices resistance earlier and returns more gently. When you catch yourself reaching for the phone, pause for 1 second. Look at the task. Ask for one small contact. Then do only that. If you continue after that, good. If you stop after 5 minutes, you still change the pattern. You showed up at the point where you usually disappear. That is not a small thing. The task you are avoiding may not need a new personality from you. It may not need a dramatic burst of motivation. It may only need a smaller door. Make the door small enough to enter today. Open the page. Write the first rough line. Move the phone away. Stay for 5 minutes. Let the work become real again. A task becomes heavier when it is carried only in the mind. It becomes lighter when your hands touch the first piece. That is the simple truth. You do not need to feel ready to begin. You need to make the beginning small enough that readiness can arrive after you move.